Joe Queer from the infamous Queers. Punk rock, we got into, when I was in high school, I was into like David Bowie, Ziggy Stardust, and then T-Rex, Martha Hoople, stuff like Iggy and the Stooges. And then when the punk rock thing started, my pal Tulu, our original drummer in the Queers way back when, he was going to school in New York City, and he got the first Ramones album. And I remember he came back on vacation and played us Beat on the Brat was the first Ramones song I ever heard. But anyway, from Bowie and Ziggy Stardust and Martha Hoople, all the young dudes, and T-Rex and Iggy and the Stooges, that was like a normal little segue into punk rock, you know? So punk rock made a lot of sense to me when I heard the Ramones. I was like, oh, this is great, the Sex Pistols and all that. So that's how I got into it, was through Tulu and hearing the Ramones the first time and just going, yeah, it was a natural progression from that stuff. Lou Reed, Rock and Roll Animal, we're all into that. And then 2 years later, you had the Ramones album, So that's how it all kind of started for me. No problem. Yeah, so my brother lived out west anyway, but I knew a lot of the New York bands. I saw the Ramones a lot. I lived near Boston in New Hampshire, so we would see the New York, not New York Dolls, but Sil Sylvain, the Criminals, the Real Kids, Neighborhoods, all these cool Boston bands and New York bands I was real familiar with, and Talking Heads and of course the Ramones and all that. And so then I went out west and I saw X and Social Distortion, Germs, you name it. I saw all sorts of tons of bands. The Blasters, they had quite a scene out west. And so I was exposed to the East Coast and the West Coast. It was really a kind of a cool schooling in punk rock. So the one thing I noticed, the difference between East Coast and West Coast, was how violent the scene was back then in around Los Angeles. I didn't really go up to San Francisco and see shows, but it was really violent out there. You'd be standing there, and because you didn't have a purple mohawk, they thought I'd have my leather jacket, and they'd say, oh, what are you going to the Bob Seger concert? Fuck you. And I'd see people, they were just dressed up normal, and these guys would just go up and punch them and just blindside them just because they didn't have a purple mohawk and stuff. It was very violent back then. But anyway, I got to be exposed to a lot of the cool West Coast bands and the East Coast bands. So I kind of saw a lot of different bands going to clubs in Los Angeles and then out in Boston and New York and stuff. So it was a kind of a cool upbringing. So, but I segued from, David Bowie started it off with me kind of. And then, I grew up in AM radio, all the great 60s bands, the Turtles and Del Shannon and the Stones and the Beatles and, you name it. So, yeah, it was kind of cool. The punk rock made sense to me. And then I really liked all the pop stuff. I just loved a good pop song. That's why I love the Ramones. I love the Dickies. A lot of bands weren't that melodic. I would love to go see the DKs. I didn't like Jello's voice that much. But back then, the crowd was more the show. The audience was the show, not so much the band. There was a big deal where it was like the band was no better than the audience. We're on the same wavelength. So, it was a good little schooling in punk rock, being able to see both East Coast and West Coast. You make new friends all the time in music. It's great. I love it. It's what I wanted to do in high school. I would have made more money with a restaurant, but it's how I met my, Stone. It's, right, how I met my wife, through music. I met her at a show here in Atlanta, it's weird. So, all my friends now, everything's revolves around music. And I've met the greatest people in my life through music. And you meet a lot of jerks, but that's life, but you meet the greatest people and you have a lot of great experiences. So, I was glad I did it. I'm glad I'm not sitting there owning a restaurant in New Hampshire going, oh man, Joey told me I wrote good songs and So I had all these songs, and we were in Boston playing around town, and we never got that big. And so it wasn't until we got on Lookout Records that the songs I was writing, they liked it. You know, there was an audience for that type of stuff. So it was really great and vindication for me. You know, like, see, I knew I wrote good songs. And so anyway, it's kind of funny how it all came about. But, you know, I'm glad to take that I took that path down there in life, you know. So it's exciting. It's a wild ride, but I love playing music. It's a pretty good education too. You know, I used to think you'd have to be like Bob Dylan's roadie, you know, like, you know, maybe get some tidbits of information from Bob Dylan about what life's like. But there's a lot of good lessons right here in punk rock that you can, you know, the lessons are there if you want to accept them and learn them. And so, yeah, it's been a pretty good voyage for me. So, yeah, but it all started back there in Exeter. It's funny how it goes on, but you gotta, when you're running a band, you got a bullseye on your back. Ask Eddie Spaghetti, ask Blag from the Doors, Ben Weasel from Screeching Weasel, you know. It's so, you get a lot of bumps and bruises and you deal with a lot of bullshit, but ultimately, it's a lot of fun. So I've been pretty blessed playing music. So you know, you need that dogged determination.
Where do you get a lot, like, pull your inspiration for your titles of your songs? Do you come up with a title? Is that how you write?
Usually, we just day-to-day stuff. We'll be in the van on tour, and someone will say something, and I always say, song title, so we will write it down. I'm like, someone write that down, and then I've got a list of the song titles. That's how we did our last album. I had this 3-page list of song titles, and so just, yeah, that's how I always start. I kind of back into the song. So I've got it's just from day-to-day stuff. And Cheeto and a Speedo eating a burrito, that was something we were singing about our old bass player Cheeto in the van. And so we're like, we got to write that song. And so that's where that came from. Shirley Needs a Dildo was an old song title from Love Songs for the Retarded that we never finished. We had that chorus, and Ben Weasel sent me a cassette tape of these song ideas I had sent him back in like 1991. And he goes, and I had forgot all about that song, and I go, oh, Shirley Needs a Dildo, that's right. So I finished it, and we put it on the new album. But yeah, it's usually day-to-day stuff with the song title, and then I'll just play with my guitar and try to come up with a chorus. And I figure if I've got a catchy chorus, then it's worth working on the song, and then I'll back into it and see if I can come up with a verse and then fool around with a bridge. And I usually back into the songs and I start with the chorus first. So it's kind of odd, but that's how I do it. And it's just day-to-day stuff. Someone will say something in the van or hanging out in the studio or whatever, and I'm like, song title, and I'll write it down, and I've got a whole list. So yeah, that's how I write. So.
Like Can't Stop Farting, that come from song?
Yeah, that was something just, again, that was at my restaurant, I think. I said to B-Face, he was washing dishes for me. I'm like, what's up, dude? We're all hungover because we've been up partying, and then we had to work. I owned the restaurant, Joe's Place, and that's, you know, they were washing dishes. I was the owner, chef. Like, what's up? Oh, I can't stop farting, dude. You know, and so I'm like, oh, that's cool. Let's do that song title. So
that was in New Hampshire, this restaurant?
Yeah, Exeter, New Hampshire. Yeah, Joe's Place. Yeah, it was a little bar restaurant I had there. It's still there. I don't know what they call it now, but it's gone through various hands, but it's still downtown Exeter. Yeah, so that's where it was open 6 days a week, and then on Sundays we would go there and we'd go down and, you know, we're in the bar and we had a little stage in there. We'd have blues bands play. So we'd set up a PA and we'd practice in there on Sundays. You know, play pinball, drink, I'd cook food, you know, have little parties in there, just a few of us. Some friends would come by. It was kind of fun. So that's where we started. And like I was saying, that show at the Trocadero in Philly was like, hey man, when all those people cheered, I was like, you know, we're just kidding. We just started in my basement, you know, Joe's Place. We're just kidding. We're having fun, you know, we're not serious about this. We don't want anybody to worship us. We're just, you know, we're glad, you know, we're just trying to have fun here. Glad you like us, but it was kind of weird to like realize people were showing up to see us and kind of serious about the band. Yeah. So, but it all started there at Joe's Place, really, for the Lookout era. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, I was going to open up another restaurant in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, And I had a deal in place, and I was going to do that. Going to sell my Exeter restaurant, Joe's Place, and then go up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's more of a seacoast touristy town, seacoast area, New Hampshire, and then we got signed to Lookout Records. Did Love Songs, and I did 2 tours. And I said to my dad, "Dad, I'm going to go play music." And I got the first royalty check for Love Songs for the Retarded. For me, was like, I think $4,200. And I would work 90 hours a week, 80 hours a week at my restaurant, and I would only take $150 a week out of the restaurant. We had to pay my parents back. They had lent me some money and stuff. And so, I got a check for $4,000. I was like, Dad, I showed my dad. He was like, what's this for? I said, play it. We put out this album. And I'm like, what? I said, I'm going to go play music. And he said, I don't blame you. Because I got a taste. We toured with Screeching Weasel and Rancid, and then, went out west. I go, oh man, this is where I want to go, down that path in life. The restaurant, I'm sure I'd make money and all that, but I want to go see what's down the bend, around the bend in the river here in music. So that's how it happened for us. So I knew I would probably I'd make more money owning a restaurant. I knew it. I could see it though. I could see the path in life if I did the restaurant. I'd go through 2 or 3 marriages, and you know what I mean? I'd have money, but my life would be empty. And so I would always wonder what would happen if I had played music. It's funny because I'll tell the story. I sent a cassette tape of 4 songs from Love Songs for the Retarded, Grow Up album, that was it, to Joey Ramone. And we were always backstage at the Ramone shows. So we sent them 4 songs. So about a month later, Ramones played University in New Hampshire. So we got backstage and bullshitted our ways backstage. And I said I was Richard Hell's cousin or something like that. And we walk into Monty's like, that's not Richard Hell's cousin. And they never had, good security, the Ramones. And they were playing ping pong, I remember that. And I said, Joey, it's Joe from the Queers. And he came over and he goes, oh, Monty, it's okay. And he immediately came over and he goes, I love, 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 and Goodbye California. Those are great songs. And he started, so I knew he had listened to the songs. I sent him Goodbye California, Love, 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 I'll Be True to You, and I Don't Want to Get Involved with You. And here's Joey Ramone, my hero, coming up and saying, those are great songs. I like the vocal phrasing on Goodbye California. And I just said I was in the Queers, and here's Joey Ramone telling me he likes the songs and he knew them. I couldn't believe it. And so when it came time to either play music or get another restaurant, I always remembered what Joey told me. He's like, you write good songs, man. You got to keep playing music. And so if I didn't do that, I'd always be thinking in the back of my head, what would have happened if I played music, And so I didn't want to be that guy. So I went down that path. I have a friend in town, Bill, here in Atlanta, and he's about 72 now, and he told me a few years ago, his band used to open up for the Allman Brothers, Piedmont Park, and Atlanta Rhythm Section in the 70s. They became kind of famous. He did studio work for kind of famous stuff. Anyway, he didn't join the band. His band could have gone on. He could have played music in his life. He ended up running a music store and doing other stuff. But he didn't do music. And he told me, he said, Joe, don't be like me. Because, man, here I am 60-something years old. And I really feel I should have done more music. I wish I had done what you're doing. And I don't know. I got this big thing telling me I never did it. I never went for it like you did. So be thankful that you went down that path. Because he goes, it sucks to be 68 years old wishing I had done this stuff back when I was younger. And so I always listen to people who are telling me that type of stuff. But yeah, I always wanted to play music. I loved it. It was what I dreamt of doing in high school.